Hey everybody. So I just finished reading this Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Just volume 1 though. And the well, I don't even know if I want to answer the questions to this book just because of it's very it's kind of a lot of the same things honestly when I really put it into perspective. It's like the fall or the decline of the Roman Empire, I should say. It consisted of just negative things basically. But we could still go with the go with the questions actually now that I think about it, just to have it structured in a sense. So, question number 1, what is this book about? And this book mainly shows what happened to the Roman Empire, and kind of the misfortunes, I should say, because a lot of it wasn't I can't say a lot of it. It pretty much was their fault. And by there, we'll get into that, but it was pretty much the misfortunes of the Roman Empire. So, number 2, what is this book about? What do they talk about? And for this part, usually I just talk about the parts I thought was cool, and the parts I really enjoy reading. So, the first part that comes to my mind is Seaman, and this guy was supposed to be he was supposed to be like 8 foot tall, 8 feet tall. Excuse me, 8 feet tall, super strong, super athletic, and and I thought that was funny because they said 8 foot tall, and when you describe that person, in my mind I thought of The Rock, and it's pretty ironic because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that's bigger and stronger than The Rock, but I just imagine him because like just big and strong. That's what I think of. When I think of big and strong, I think of people like The Rock. But that part. Obviously I don't believe it. I just thought it was hilarious. This dude was supposed to be 8 foot tall, super strong. And he was a young buck too. He was, if I remember correctly, he was under. I know he was under 20, so maybe around 18, and he became a general. I think at the, I'm not sure what age, but I know he died when he was around in his 50s, and by then he was like, one of the top generals, or the top general, I should say. So the next part that I can't say I thought was cool, but we could kind of just go in chronological order actually with the book about what happened. So we could talk about how the decline happened first of all. So mostly it happened from just bad leaders, honestly. And I don't really want to say that's the leader's fault, simply because they probably just didn't know. Especially when a 20-year-old, and I'm not sure how educated people were in that time, but a 20-year-old in this day and age could become the president. Like, for example, if someone like read as much as I did and was reading multiple books a day, except for this book. This book took me 2 days to read because this was a long book, especially since I downloaded the audiobook and I was reading that for a while. Like, I had the speed on times 3, and it still took me 2 days to finish reading. So, so this is a long read, honestly, but you know, a valuable read, I should say. But as I was saying, in this day and age, it's like anybody could get smart. Like, all I did was pick up a book, and I'm better than I was months ago in a lot of different ways. So so maybe it's not hard for a 20-year-old to become a leader now, but I know in that time it was very different. So it was probably hard on a 20-year-old, especially when 20-year-olds, if they're not well educated enough, they're probably gonna want to be, of course, just tyrannical leaders. But when I think of tyrannical leaders, I think of, weirdly enough, I think of Gilgamesh from Uruk. I'm not sure if it's called the Story of Gilgamesh, the Story of Uruk. I'm not sure which one it's called, but with Gilgamesh, he wasn't necessarily tyrannical. especially since like he worked for the people. But we can we could talk about the exact person that's who I'm thinking about. And I can't say exact person because I forgot his name, but when I pronounce it, it's like Eglisad, Eglisad, and he was also a Roman king. And this guy was vanitatious. He was he was vanitatious. He had all the gold, you know. This is what I think when I think of Gilgamesh. All the gold, you know, nice haircut. And weirdly enough, they actually did have barbers in this time of the Roman Empire. And that's one thing I always wondered. I wondered how did they get their haircuts? And I know that the Spartans they had their hair long, but you know these people the kings at least, the emperors, they actually were kept well groomed. So that's something cool to know. But Eglisad, as I was saying, he was vanitatious. You know, he was like a playboy in a sense. Also with everything. You know, he was just killing people, killing people for no reason. Well, because he didn't like them, and that's reason enough, honestly. You know, killing people. But as I was saying, okay, we can go back to. Oh no, I'm getting off topic. So for a 20-year-old being a leader, as I was saying, it's a hard thing, and that kind of led to or that did lead to the decline, especially when it comes to decisions regarding finances and just the state of the citizens. Like for example, Christianity. Now, as we know, not everyone believes in Christianity, and at the time, at the beginning, or I can't say at the beginning, but around 200, I want to say 200 AD, and the AD it stands for, if I remember correctly, Ando Decimini, which means after Christ, like the years after Christ. So this is, in a sense, CE or AC. Wait, after Christ, CE, Common Era. I remember this Common Era. Honestly, that's what they taught us in school, especially since going to a public school they don't talk about religion, so they call it the Common Era. So with that, the with the Christianity, the philosophers at the time and the emperors didn't agree with it. Like they thought, why? Like for example, Marcus Aurelius. This is you might even know him because he is the famous Stoic Marcus Aurelius. He was an emperor at the time. Was an emperor before, of course, he died. Because that's the thing. Pretty much everyone died, and everyone still does die to this day. And that's why that's we can get into that later again. But you know, pretty much everyone died. Marcus Aurelius, he died, the famous Stoic, and I forgot what I was talking about. We can go on to the next part though. Oh yes, the Christians. Sorry. So with the Christians, no one believed in it, but it got taken over, or it took over as the main religion when, if I remember correctly, Constantine was the emperor in 300, around 314 A.D. CE, whichever one you want to call it. But when Constantine was the emperor, you know, Christianity took over because Constantine, while he was a bad leader in some aspects, like for example, he he had Diocletian, who was the leader before him, and he was a relatively good person. But Constantine had Diocletian's wife and daughter just imprisoned and later murdered. Now, why? Just because, you know, not to be glib, but just because. Well, there could have been some other reasons too. Maybe he just didn't want, you know, the past people to rule. I mean, just to be in the state, I guess. So, so with Constantine, you know, he wasn't the best ruler. He also he also went to war with, this was like a civil war too. He went to war with the other emperor at the time because there was, you know, it's just a whole mess basically. So Diocletian went to war with the other emperor. Well, I'm pretty sure his name was Maximus, not Maximin. That they fatigued Maximus, and he went and fought him. Maximus, he fled the city. He fled the city. He gathered an army, but he didn't do nothing else. So that was kind of pointless of him. So then Constantine is the sole emperor. Then Constantine dies, and then his three sons are each are the emperor equally. One of the sons dies. Another dude pops up. Another son dies, and no one pops up for him. So now it's another two people, and these two people they fight, and Constantine's son Constantius, he wins. So he's the new emperor, the sole emperor. Yay! And then this dude, he signed an expensive peace treaty. So with that, the Romans they like ran out of money, and at the time, people also were dying of sickness, and that's how Constantius died. He died of sickness. Boom, he's dead. Julian shows up, and this guy was actually relatively good. So, and throughout this whole time, the Romans are declining throughout this whole time, because it's like nothing pretty much. It's pretty much just fighting relentlessly, which in my reading of War and Peace and War, I know just fighting relentlessly is just not good. So now Julius is a leader, and he dies in battle. He got hit in the liver with something. If I remember correctly, it was an arrow or a little sword. So and then after after he dies, another dude, his name started with the J also. I'm pretty sure it's Johavian. Johavian shows up. He dies like instantly. Like within the first few months of his reign, he's dead. Another dude shows up. And that's where I'm at now. Well, at the end I should say, this guy, he just signed a treaty, if I remember, with the Goths. And because they were about to go to war. Oh yeah, throughout this whole time also they were fighting. As I was saying, not just civil wars, but war with the Persians and the Goths. So they were fighting. And it's just a bad situation. But that's what I was saying. It can't really be the emperor's fault if they just don't know. Like if the emperor doesn't know what to do, then it can't be their fault. Like if I was made the emperor, it's not my fault if I don't know. And that's kind of the way I'm thinking now, because if someone is given a test, for example, AP statistics, that's a class that I'm looking to take. So if I were to be given the AP statistics test now, I wouldn't do that good simply because I don't know all the equations and formulas. So you can't say it's really my fault. I was never taught this stuff. So if someone was never taught the art of reigning, the art of kingmanship, then it's not their fault. So it's just a bad situation. It was a bad situation down in Rome. So yes, it was man, when you think about it, it's just constant war. So it was bad. Oh yes, also another funny thing. It's funny. Edward Gibbon, he left. He had this in one paragraph throughout this whole thing, and I thought this was the funniest thing out of the whole book. So he said, just one random day, 600 of the prisoners that were that were fighting as gladiators, because the Roman gladiators, they were fighting, and 600 of them just escaped throughout the night. But most of them didn't escape because they first of all, they went around pillaging the city that they were in. And then later, they just went around killing random people, just killing everybody. And then they later died. They were either killed or they were imprisoned again. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever, because it was just like random. Like he mentioned it out of nowhere, and he mentioned it like it was nothing. Like 600 people escaping and just basically pillaging a part of a city is nothing. But I guess it was, it must have been normal with the Roman times, with how everyone was already fighting throughout these years relentlessly, as I was saying. But man, it was a crazy situation. That's all I know. It was a crazy situation. So now we could talk about number 3. Is this book true? And it's obviously, being a historical work, it's not always or fully true. So it's true in part. And of course, obviously some parts of this are fake. And even the author, he mentioned some parts that he didn't know. So I appreciate him for that. And I know this is an old work, so Edward Gibbon, you're not alive right now, but you're still alive, bro. Look at this. Your words is on paper, bro. You still alive in the minds of a lot of people in this day and age. That's how time is interpreted. You still alive, bro. But so yeah, it's true in just in part. And then, what's the meaning of this book? And obviously I could talk about the meaning is you mentioned the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, or I could talk about what I said in the video about the Spartans, which also is about the Romans, and that's that all the people ended up dying. And this is kind of what I've touched on briefly in my last video, is that we're all gonna die, whether you understand that or not. And I also talked about this in other videos too. Now that I think about it, my positive neuroscience book. We're all gonna die, so make sure to live it up. And honestly, that's my mood or my thought process when I just go through my daily life. I think of, well, I'm just gonna die anyways. Why not do this? Why not learn about this and have a great time reading about this stuff? If one day I'm just gonna perish like the rest of these emperors and empires. So I think, and I personally think that's a great mindset to have, because it allows you to do the things that maybe you were scared to do in the past. So it's a good thing, but if your mindset's not in the best place right now, your headspace I should say, then I don't think it's a good mindset to harness, just because it can make you even more sad. But I don't suffer from problems like those, so all it does is benefit me. All it does is just amplify the effects of my abilities. So this is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 1.